Good morning, students. Now we are going to learn the new lesson in Biobotany, Chapter 4, Principles and Processes of Biotechnology. Biotechnology, it is a science of applied biological processes. We are learning so many processes, facts, concepts in biology. If the knowledge of all this, when we apply in producing the useful products for benefit of the mankind, then we call it as a biotechnology. So, science of development and utilization of biological processes, their forms and systems for the benefit of the mankind and other life forms is called as biotechnology. The term biotechnology was first coined by Karl Ehrke in 1919. He was an Hungarian engineer. There is a vast development in the field of biotechnology now. The living beings, cells, organelles and the isolated molecules and other biological raw materials are converted to produce the product of greater value in biotechnology. So there is a traditional knowledge of this biotechnology. Before 6000 BC to 3000 BC itself, people were making bread using fermentation technology. They were fermenting the fruit juices, plant exudates, to produce alcoholic beverages using yeast. Biotechnology has developed by the leaps and bounds during the past century. Man has been using this for a long time. The kitchen technology uses the bacteria and other microbes in the daily usage of preparation of the dairy products like curd, ghee, cheese, and in the preparation of the food like idli, dosa, naan, bread, pizza. And we have been using this technique, the fermenting technique, fermenting process of the microorganism in the preparation of the alcoholic beverages like beer, wine, etc. Modern biotechnology. Modern biotechnology lies on two aspects. The first one is that it is the ability to change the genetic material for getting a new products. The genes are altered with a specific requirement. So to alter the genes, we need a specific technology that is called as recombinant DNA technology. And secondly, the ownership of the newly developed technology. If they produce a new product which is of more important, beneficial, advantageous, they will become the owner of that new product. And it also relies on the social impact it makes on the society. Interdisciplinary fields of biotechnology. So biotechnology is one of the most applied interdisciplinary science of the 21st century. It is a new trusted area which enable us to find many beneficial way of life. So biotechnology has been widely used, applied in various sectors like agriculture, medicine, environment, commercial industries, etc. So it includes the knowledge of genetics, molecular biology, immunology, microbiology, cell biology, biochemistry, bioinformatics and biophysics. So all these branches of knowledge are applied in the biotechnology to produce new products in the field of agriculture, medicine and diagnosing the new disease, or pharmaceuticals making the medicine for any disease, vaccination, even for the COVID-19 vaccine, the biotechnology lab only is producing the vaccine for it, improving the livestock, the cattle, the animals, domestic animals, what we are using for our daily life, for our benefit, which produce the, and the biotechnology is being applied on other fields also like nanobiotechnology, biomedical engineering. By this technology, these fields are getting improved and they are getting great development and boom. So nanotechnology and with the biological and biochemical applications, nanobiotechnology, biomedical engineering. Engineering is applied in the principles and techniques of the medical field, that is called biomedical engineering, and tissue engineering, study of the biomaterial stem cells to repair and replace the body parts, tissues, organs, etc., and chemical engineering, conversion of the raw material into valuable forms with the application of the physical and the life sciences. Traditional biotechnology is a conventional biotechnology, and it has been developed during the past centuries, and we get many products out of it. The important one is that fermentation technology. Fermentation refers to the metabolic process in which the organic molecules, normally it will be glucose molecule, is converted into acids, gases, or alcohols in the absence of oxygen, that is anaerobic respiration, or any electron transport chain. The study of fermentation is called as zymology. Louis Pasteur, who is a French chemist, he demonstrated that the fermentation was caused by yeast in 1856. What is zymology? The study of fermentation and the practical uses of it is called as zymology. So, in the industries, in the modern biotechnology, we are using bioreactors. So, the term fermentation came from the Latin word fervor, which means to boil. The bioreactor or the fermenter, it is a vessel or a container that is designed to provide optimum environment or the suitable environment for the microorganisms, and make their enzyme to react with the substrate, whatever we are providing as a substrate, to produce the required product. So in the bioreactor, the aeration, agitation, connections through which the inoculum will be introduced into the bioreactor, and it will be kept in the sterile medium, because a particular microorganism will produce a particular product, so it should not be contaminated with the other microorganism. It should not be contaminated with any other microorganism, so it should be kept sterile. And the impeller to mix the content and oxygen temperature and the pH, everything will be maintained inside. The internal environment will be maintained. It is in the controlled environment. The temperature, pH, everything will be controlled inside. And the fermentation involves two processes, namely upstream processes and the downstream processes, which are all called as the upstream processes. All the processes before starting the fermenter, before fermentations take place, whatever we do for in the vessel, we call it as upstream processes. That is the preparation, sterilization of the bioreactor, sterilization of the culture medium, and the growth of the suitable inoculum. So we have to introduce a suitable inoculum into the bioreactor, and these are all called as upstream processes. So I repeat, upstream processes are the sterilization of the fermenter, preparation and sterilization of the culture medium, as well as the suitable inoculum. Three things forms the upstream process. The downstream processes, so all the processes after fermentation. So once the fermentation process is over, whatever we are doing after fermentation, they are considered as the downstream processes. And this process include distillation. So we have to make it undisturbed for the distillation, and we have to centrifuge it and filter certain product at different stages, at different timings, and the solvent extraction from the bioreactor constitute the downstream processes. What are the procedures that are involved in the fermentation? So first one, depending upon the type of product, so what we need to get, the bioreactor must be selected of appropriate size with the appropriate utilization. Then a suitable substrate or a liquid medium is added at a specific temperature, pH, and then it is diluted. So substratum is very important, in which the microorganism will live, and it will convert the product into useful product. It acts upon the substratum to convert it into the useful product. So a suitable substrate liquid media is very important, and it must have the specific temperature, pH, and the dilution. The organism, that is the inoculum we say. So microbe or the animal or the plant cells or subcellular organelles or enzymes, whatever it is, that must be introduced into the substratum, that is added to the substratum. Then it is incubated at the specific temperature for specific time. Once the incubation is over, the incubation may be of aerobic type or anaerobic type. If allowing oxygen inside, it is aerobic. If you are not allowing oxygen to proceed with the fermentation, then it is anaerobic. So after which we will withdraw the products using the downstream processes. So these are the procedures of the fermentation. What are the applications of fermentation in the industries? So we use it for production of the microbial biomass. So microbial biomass, we produce algae, bacteria, fungi, yeast, etc. And they are collected, they are dried, and they are used as a complete source of protein. And this only we call it as a single cell protein, SCP. And it serves as the food for human beings as well as animal. You would have seen that SCP tablets. Secondly, microbial metabolites are made. These are the products of metabolism, and they are again classified into primary and secondary. So what are primary metabolites? If the metabolites are used for the maintenance of the life process of microbes, then we call it as primary metabolites. Used for the maintenance of life processes of the microbes, then we call it as primary metabolites. What are secondary metabolites? These metabolites will not be used, will not be required for any vital processes of the living organism or microbes. Then we call it as secondary metabolites. Examples for primary metabolites are ethanol, citric acid, lactic acid, and acetic acid. Similarly, for secondary metabolite includes the amphotericin B, which is got from the Streptomyces nodosus, penicillin, Penicillium chrysogenum, Streptomycin griseus, tetracycline, Streptomycin aerophaciens, alkaloids, toxic pigments, and vitamins, etc. Then enzymes, microbial enzymes. So when the microbes are cultured, they secrete certain enzymes into the growth media, and these enzymes are used industrially in making the detergents, food processing, brewing, as well as pharmaceuticals. Example for this is protease, amylase, isomerase, lipase. All these enzymes are of very significant, they are very important. Bioconversion and biotransformation. What do you mean by this bioconversion? The fermenting microbes has the capacity to produce valuable products. They will convert the substratum into valuable products. They will convert the, like example, conversion of the ethanol to acetic acid, which is a vinegar we use, etc. Then single cell protein, which this we have already seen, which is the microbial biomass. SCP are the cells, dried cells of microorganisms that are used as a protein supplement in the human food and of animals, and it provides unconventional and very possible solution for the protein deficiency faced by the entire humanity. So because it contains all the nutrient, it is of high nutritive value, and it contains the proteins, vitamins, essential amino acids, lipid content, high lipid content, and so it is of very high nutritive value. There are some drawbacks because it is not easily digestible. It cannot be easily digested by all age people. Because of the high nucleic acid content, it becomes slower in the digestibility. So the microorganisms which are involved in the production of the single cell protein are bacteria like Methylophilus, Methylotropus, Cellulomonas, alkaligens, fungi like Agaricus campestris, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Candida utilis, algae like Spirulina, Chlorella, Chlamydomonas are used for the production of the SCPs. And single cell protein becomes an important food source for the people like astronauts, and the people who are living in the Antarctica. It provides good amount of proteins, carbohydrates, fat and vitamins and minerals for them. And spirulina can be easily grown in the wastewater, and even it is grown from the potato processing plants. They are also grown on the straws, the plant waste, molasses and animal manure, and even in sewage it can be grown. Because of this property, this spirulina culture is able to decompose and recycle the waste. It is used to reduce the environmental pollution. So 250 grams of methylophilus or methylotropous, it can be able to produce 25 tons of proteins. It is cultured even in the waste. It can produce about 25 tons of protein. So turnover is very great for SCP, and the materials requirement or the investment will be very less. What are the applications of single cell protein? Single cell protein is mainly used as a protein supplement. It is also used in the cosmetics for healthy hair and skin, and it is used in the poultry as an excellent source of protein. And animals, birds feeding this SCPs, the cattle, birds, fishes, when they are fed with this SCP, their biomass increases to a great extent, and they give a lot of profit for the people who are culturing, who are having the farm. It is used in the food industries as aroma carriers, vitamin carrier, as an emulsifying agent to improve the nutritive value of the products like soups and ready to serve meals, and in the diet recipes, etc. It is used in the industries like paper processing, leather processing and farm stabilizers, etc. Next we shall see the modern biotechnology. Modern biotechnology embraces all the genetic manipulation, gene manipulation, protoplasmic fusion techniques. The two protoplasm of the cells can be fused, and this is protoplasmic fusion technique, and the improvements which are made in the old biological processes. Genetic engineering is otherwise called as recombinant DNA technology, gene cloning. All these terms collectively include the different experiments resulting in the modification of the gene. By transferring the particular gene from one organism to another, we can modify the genome of an organism. Conventional recombination involves the exchange or the recombination of the genes between the homologous chromosomes during meiosis, cell division. But in the modern technology, the recombination is nothing but the gene manipulation. It is a technique that involves the transfer of the DNA coding for a particular gene for a specific desired character is transferred from one organism to another using specific agents like vectors, using the instruments like electroporation, gene gun, liposome or chemical mediated transfers and micro injection, etc. Steps involved in the recombinant DNA technology. So first we need to isolate the gene of interest, and this must be taken from the organism which is having this gene of interest, and this is called as the insert. And similarly we have to remove the particular segment not needed from the host DNA. So this gene must be inserted into the plasmid or DNA, and both these segments are removed with the help of the restriction enzymes. The same restriction enzymes can be used after the gene of interest must be inserted into the plasmid by using ligase enzyme. So mix the DNA and add ligase to join the DNA pieces by base pairing method. And now we got a complete plasmid, circular plasmid, which is called as recombinant DNA plasmid with the gene of interest. The red color indicates the gene of interest. Then this plasmid must be inserted into the host body. So this is the carrier plasmid, which is vector, which is called as vector, and after combining it, and this recombinant DNA must be inserted into the host cell, and which is usually E. coli cells, and this will help in the multiplication, replication of this circular DNA and produce more number of copies of this recombinant DNA plasmid. By keeping this E. coli cells in the agarose gel, containing the ampicillin, we can provide an environment for the bacterial cell to make a large colony, out of which we have to choose the positive clones. It can be exponentially replicated to make more copies of the desired DNA. And this can be isolated, this DNAs can be isolated and can be tested for the properties of the gene of interest. When the vectors and host are not involved, the desired gene can be multiplied by a method called PCR. You would have heard about this PCR method for COVID-19 testing also. By using this method, we can make multiple copies of this gene of interest. Multiple copies of a particular region of the DNA can be made out of this PCR method. PCR is nothing but the polymerase chain reaction, and in this method the gene of interest is injected into the host cell protoplast using shotgun method. Tools for genetic engineering. The basic tools for genetic engineering are the enzymes, vectors and the host organism. The most important enzymes which are required for genetic engineering are the restriction enzyme, DNA ligase and alkaline phosphatase. First we shall see about the restriction enzyme. Scientists identified two enzymes which are responsible for restricting the growth of the bacteriophage in certain bacteria like E. coli bacteria, and this was first isolated in the year 1963. Out of the two enzymes, one was able to add a methyl group to DNA, while other one was able to cut the DNA fragments. And the second enzyme which was able to cut the DNA are termed as the restriction endonuclease. So restriction endonuclease is an enzyme that will cleave the DNA into fragments at the recognition site. Recognition site means where the enzyme will be able to recognize. This is the point at which we can cut the DNA like that. That is what is called as recognition site, and that will be present within the molecule of the DNA, and that is called as restriction site. The recognition site of this enzyme on the DNA is called as restriction site. Based on the mode of action, the restriction enzymes are classified into exonuclease and endonuclease. So exonuclease are enzymes which will remove the nucleotide one at a time from one end of the DNA molecule. They are called as exonuclease. Example for this is BAL31. Whereas endonuclease are the enzymes which will break the internal phosphodiester of the DNA molecule. An example for this is HIND2, E. coli, etc. There are many listed in this page. They are restriction endonucleases. And restriction endonuclease, they are called as molecular scissors. They paved the foundation for the recombination DNA technology. These enzymes exist in many bacteria, and for the bacteria, they become a part of defense mechanism. Restriction enzymes become a part of defense mechanism in some microbes, and they call it as the restriction modification system. There are three classes of restriction enzymes, namely type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 2 is most preferred for the recombinant DNA technology. And in the table we can see many types of restriction enzymes which are derived from many microbial source. Cutting point on the DNA molecule and the fragments, whether they are sticky or blunt ends, is given in this table. The restriction enzyme HIND2 always cut the DNA molecule at the point of recognition at specific sequence of 6 base pairs. So we are going to see about HIND2. 6 base pairs are here, and now today they have found out nearly 900 restriction enzymes which have been isolated from 230 bacteria of different recognition sequence. Restriction endonuclease, how they are named, the nomenclature of the restriction enzymes. Restriction endonuclease, they are named in a standard procedure. For example, E. coli, that is E. coli, the first letter is taken from the genus name Escherichia. E is taken. The second two letters are taken from the species name. First two letters coli, CO, is taken. And thirdly, the strain, the name of the strain is, the type of the strain is added, whether it is rough strain or smooth strain, R is added. Then finally a Roman numeral which indicates the order of the discovery, whether it is first, second, third or like that. So it is E cor first. This is how they name the restriction endonuclease. So normally these restriction enzymes, they will cut the DNA at a site which is called as, generally called as palindromic site. Restriction sites are normally palindromic, which means the sequence is read from both the sides in the same way. I hope you all know the palindromic sequence. The exact cleavage is produced by the restriction enzymes, which is very important for the design of cloning experiment. So how do they cut? Whether they cut in a way, they cleave both the strands through the center like this. When it cut through the center, it will cut the DNA into two fragments, which is having the blunt or the flush ends, and they are known as symmetric cut. These are known as symmetric cuts. Whereas if they cut in a way in which one fragments will be having the protruding end and another fragment will be having the recessive end, then it is called as sticky or cohesive ends. This is called sticky or cohesive ends, and this cut is called as staggered or asymmetric cut. Next two enzymes that play an important role in the recombinant DNA technology are DNA ligase and alkaline phosphatase. DNA ligase enzyme joins with the sugar and the phosphate molecule. Of double-stranded DNA, dsDNA, with the 5' phosphatase end and 3' OH end. With the help of a adenosine triphosphate dependent reaction, it is able to join the two strands, and this ligase enzyme is isolated from the T4 bacteriophage. Next enzyme is called alkaline phosphatase, and this enzyme helps to modify the DNA by adding or removing the phosphate group at the 5' terminal ends of the double-stranded DNA or the single-stranded DNA. Thus, it prevents self-ligation. If the phosphate group are present, they will join by itself. So, self-ligation will take place. So, it should be removed from the 5' end, by which it will prevent the self-ligation, and it will help in the addition of the desired fragment of the DNA. So when it has to add this desired fragment DNA, which is having the phosphate group, it will be able to join by the enzyme called DNA ligase. After enzymes, next important tool is the vectors, and vectors are normally a plasmid. It is a small DNA molecule capable of self-replication, and it is used to carry or transport the DNA fragment which is inserted into it for the cloning experiment, and so it is called as cloning vehicle or cloning DNA. What are the properties of vectors? So we know that vectors will replicate by itself to produce multiple copies of them along with the DNA inserted into it, and so it should be of very small size with low molecular weight, less than 10 kb for kilo base pairs. When it is smaller in size, it will be easy to enter or get transferred into the host cell. And vectors must possess origin of replication so that it can replicate independently without the help of the host. This origin of replication is denoted by ORI. With this sequence, the replication starts by itself with the piece of the DNA which is linked to it, and it can replicate within the host cell. Secondly, it should contain a suitable marker or selectable marker. This markers will enable the cell containing the vectors to be selected or identified easily. Normally, this marker gene would be antibiotic resistant gene. This will permit to detect whether they are present, whether this plasmid is present inside the host cell, whether it is got transformed into the host cell or not. So for identification we need a marker, that is selectable marker. Thirdly, cloning vector need a single cleavage site for each of one or more restriction enzyme used. The plasmid should have a cleaving site, preferably one, so that the restriction enzyme can act on that particular site. And it will also help to integrate with the gene of desire. So the plasmid, with the help of this cloning site, will integrate with the gene of interest, and so it will act as single plasmid DNA and will be replicating along with the gene of interest. Types of vectors. First one is cloning vector. Second one is expression vector. Cloning vectors are used to do the cloning of the DNA insert with the suitable host cell. Expression vectors are used to express the DNA insert for producing a specific protein inside the host cell. And these are the different types of vectors. Few vectors are discussed in detail. Normally they are plasmid. Plasmids are extra chromosomal self-replicating double-stranded circular DNA found in the bacterial cells in addition to the bacterial chromosome, and they contain genetic information for their own replication. They do not depend on the bacterial cells chromosome. First one is PBR322. It was a reconstructed plasmid and most widely used cloning vector. It contains 4361 base pairs. So in this name, P denotes the plasmid, B and R are denoting the scientists who have developed this plasmid, that is Bolivar and Rodriguez. And the number 322 is the number of plasmid developed in the laboratory by them. It contains AMPR and TET-R. These are the two different antibiotic resistant genes, and the recognition site for several restriction enzymes like HIND3, PSM, EAMH1, etc. ROP, this particular segment code for the proteins which are involved in the replication of the plasmid. Contains a ORI site also. ORI is for the origin of replication site. This is the TI plasmid. TI plasmid is found in the Agrobacterium tumefaciens, and this is responsible for inducing the tumors in several dicot plants because it carries a gene called TRA gene, and this TRA gene will help in the transfer of tDNA, transfer DNA. It has ONC gene, ONC, which will code for the oncogenicity, that means cancer. So tumor inducing ONC gene or TI. So the plasmid is called TI plasmid. And the ORI gene, origin of replication, and INC for incompatibility, INC gene for incompatibility. So Agrobacterium tumefaciens plasmid have been used for the introduction of the genes of the desirable trait into the plants. Shuttle vector. Shuttle vectors are the plasmid designed to replicate cells in two different species. They can replicate both in prokaryotic as well as eukaryotic cell. And these vectors are created by the recombinant technique. The shuttle vectors can propagate in one host, and they can move to the another host without any extra manipulation. Most of the shuttle vectors are eukaryotic vectors. Next is the E. coli expression vector. E. coli expression vectors are suitable for expressing the foreign proteins, and so they are called as expression vectors. These vectors consist of the signals which are necessary for the transcription, translation of the proteins in the host cell, and so it helps the host cell to produce foreign protein in large amount. Next tool which is needed for the recombinant DNA technology is the competent host. So the propagation of the recombinant DNA molecule occurs inside the living system that is called host, and most of the time this host will be E. coli, which is a bacteria, because this E. coli can divide every 20 minutes in optimal growing conditions. But this E. coli has to take up this foreign DNA into it, foreign plasmid into it. Since the DNA is hydrophilic molecule, they are waterproof. Recombinant DNA cannot pass through the cell membrane. In order to force the bacteria to take this plasmid, the bacterial cells must be first treated. So what do they do for this treatment? They keep this host bacterial cell in the specific concentration of divalent cation Ca++ for some time, and this recombinant DNA can be then forced into these cells by incubating these cells along with the recombinant DNA on the ice, which is followed by keeping them at a temperature of 42 degrees Celsius incubator, which is called as heat shock. Again then putting them back to the ice. So this will enable this bacteria to take up the recombinant DNA. Anyhow, for the expression of the eukaryotic protein, eukaryotic cells are preferred, eukaryotic host cells are preferred, because only the eukaryotic cell can functionally produce the protein, active protein, because the proteins of the eukaryotes have to fold properly, and the post-translational modification for the eukaryotic protein is more than the prokaryotic cell. So the prokaryotic E. coli host will not be suitable for the eukaryotic protein expression. The next step in rDNA technology is that to introduce the recombinant DNA molecule into the host cell, suitable host cell. So there may be many methods. There are many methods to introduce these recombinant vectors. It depends on the several factors of the vector as well as the host cell type. There are two kinds of gene transfer. They are direct or vectorless gene transfer. Another one is indirect vector mediated gene transfer. So vector mediated gene transfer we have seen so far. What are the different types of vectors as well as the properties of the vectors, etc. Now let us see the direct or the vectorless gene transfer. First one is chemical mediated gene transfer, PEG. PEG is for polyethylene glycol. Certain chemicals like PEG or dextran sulfate induce the DNA uptake by the plant protoplast. They will automatically, when the cells are treated with this, they will automatically take up the rDNA. The next one is called as microinjection. So this is the microinjection. So in this the DNA is slightly injected into the nucleus using a fine tipped glass needle, which is called as micropipette. The protoplast is immobilized on a solid support. Normally it is agarose gel. Using a microscope, it is held properly, and with the help of this micropipette, under suction, it can be the DNA, rDNA can be inserted into the host cell. Next type is called as electroporation. Here a pulse of high voltage is applied to the protoplast of the cell. So high voltage is applied to the protoplast of the cell or the tissues, which will make transient pores. Transient pore means the temporary pores which will appear, and after the withdrawal of the high voltage it will close in the plasma membrane, and through this pores the foreign DNA can be inserted inside, and this is what is called as electroporation method of gene transfer. The next method is called as liposome mediated gene transfer. So liposomes are nothing but the artificial phospholipid vesicle. So these are the liposome. So along with this liposome, when this DNA fragments, artificial phospholipid vesicle, gene or the DNA which is transferred from the liposome into the vacuole of the plant cell, by which it is got into the protoplast of the host cell. This DNA will be encapsulated Liposome encapsulated DNA will be inserted into the vacuole, and it is advantageous. Why? Because liposomes will protect the introduced DNA from being damaged by the acidic pH or protease enzyme which are present in the vacuoles. So vacuoles will have some enzymes like protease, and it will have the acidic medium. So this liposomes will be protecting the introduced DNA into it. Liposome and tonoplast of vacuole fusion resulted in the gene transfer. The process is called lipofaction. Next type is called as biolistic. In this, the foreign DNA is coated onto the surface of a minute gold or tungsten particle, which is of 1 to 3 μm, and it will be bombarded onto the target cell using a particle gun, also called as jeet gun or microprojectile gun or shotgun. These are the other names. Then the bombarded cells or the tissues are cultured on the selected medium to regenerate the plant for the transferred gene. Next we have the indirect method or the vector mediated gene transfer. For this we need a bacterium which is called as Agrobacterium tumefaciens, and this has a large plasmid which is called as Ti plasmid or tumor inducing plasmid. Because of this plasmid, this particular bacteria has the capacity to infect the plant cell at the wounded site by itself. So when the desired gene of interest is inserted into this plasmid, which is called Ti plasmid, so in the first step we have to insert the gene of interest into the Ti plasmid of the Agrobacterium tumefaciens. Then this will be inserted into the bacteria, and this recombinant Ti plasmid will be introduced into the plant cell by mere infection of the Agrobacterium tumefaciens, by which the desired gene will be growing in the plant cell, and that's why it is called as natural genetic engineers of plants. So why Agrobacterium tumefaciens are called as natural genetic engineers of plant? Because they have the capacity to infect the plant cell and insert the tDNA into the plant genome at the wounded site of the plant body. Next we have the screening of the recombinants. After introduction of the recombinant DNA into the suitable host, we must know whether it is inserted into the host cell or not. To identify this, whether the host cell has received the rDNA molecule, we need a process called screening. And for this we are having some methods. The best method is the blue and white selection method or insertional inactivation. So in this, blue and white colony will be made. For this we need recombinant plasmid which is having a reporter gene which is called LAC-Z. So before inserting the rDNA into the host, it must have a reporter gene which is called LAC-Z, and this LAC-Z gene will encode for the enzyme beta galactosidase enzyme, and this will have several recognition sites for restriction enzymes also. So what do this beta galactosidase do? So this beta galactosidase will break the synthetic substrate, the X-gal normally. This X-gal will consist of the 5-bromo 5-chloro indolyl beta D galactopyranoside. When this beta galactosidase is inserted into this X-gal substrate, it will produce an insoluble blue color product. But if the LAC gene has got a foreign gene in the plasmid, then the blue color will not develop. So the beta galactosidase will not be synthesized due to the inactivation of the LAC-Z, and the LAC-Z will be inactivated by the foreign gene, and therefore the blue color will not be produced when there is a foreign gene or the gene of insert is introduced into the rDNA. So by this we can identify whether the plasmid has got whether the host cell in its plasmid has got the recombinant DNA or the foreign gene of interest in it or not. An antibiotic resistant marker is used for screening of recombinants. This gene is along with the desired gene is inserted into the plasmid, and the vectors which are inserted into the host cell, when they are allowed to grow on the antibiotic medium, on the medium which is having this antibiotic, the recombinant will grow on this medium nicely as they contains the genes that is encoding for the resistance to antibiotic. Whereas the other, which is not having this antibiotic resistant marker gene in their plasmid, will not be able to grow. So by this we will be able to understand whether the cells have got the recombinant DNA or not. Using this antibiotic resistant marker, there is another technique which is called as replica plating technique. This technique, in which the pattern of colonies growing on the culture plate is copied. So the filter plate is pressed on the culture plate, and this is again pressed over the second sterile culture plate. The sterile culture plate will have the ampicillin antibiotic. So when they are pressed over this second plate which is containing this antibiotic, the cells, the colonies of cells which are having this antibiotic resistant marker alone will be growing. The other cells will not be growing. By this we can identify whether the cells have got the rDNA, recombinant DNA or not.